Why do people who've done everything right financially still worry it's not enough to retire? As a certified financial planner who's helped dozens avoid hidden IRA tax bombs and outdated benchmarks, I've finally cracked the code. So in this video, I'm going to show you the legacy wealth journey, a simple framework that'll clarify your financial future, significantly reduce taxes, and have you retiring with confidence sooner than you thought. Most people don't stay in their jobs because they want to. They stay because they're afraid of what happens if they let go. That voice in the back of their head says, what if we're missing something? What if we retire and we run out of money? What if we wait too long and miss the best years of our life? It's not just about running out of money. It's about running out of time, which is the one thing that you will never get back. That's where John and Linda were when they came to see me. They weren't looking for another calculator or a hot take on the market. They were looking for clarity, a path forward that they could actually trust. Let me show you how I helped them find it. Step 1, the legacy review session. So when John and Linda first sat down, they were hesitant, polite and thoughtful, but you could tell that there was tension underneath the surface. They were both 62, still working full-time, and had done a great job saving. They had about $2.3 million between retirement and taxable accounts, but despite all that, they weren't sure they could really retire. John said something right away that stuck with me. He said, "We just want to make sure we're not missing anything. We've come this far and we don't want to screw it up now." So before we even looked at the numbers, I asked them to tell me about their life. We talked about their careers, John's years as an engineer, Linda's work running operations at their nonprofit, and their daughter who lives in Oregon, and their dream of traveling to Europe, and the fear that if they retired too soon, they might not be able to enjoy it all. So as we talked, the financial picture began to take shape. They had $1.8 million in tax-deferred accounts, $400,000 in their joint brokerage account. Their expenses were about $10,000 a month, and they had a $52,000 pension, which was really solid, and a Social Security that was going to come on in a few years. They didn't have any debt, but they did have the desire to gift $150,000 to help their daughter buy a home. So what jumped out at me wasn't just the balances, but it was actually the imbalance. Nearly everything was in tax-deferred accounts. They didn't have a withdrawal plan. Their estate plan hadn't been updated in years. They had no idea what would happen if one of them passed away early. So John and Linda weren't looking for another spreadsheet. They needed a clear picture of where they stood and whether the life they wanted was within reach. So as we walked through their current income streams, tax exposure, future RMDs, it became clear. They didn't have a money problem. They had a coordination problem. Their plan wasn't aligned. Their investments, taxes, estate docs, and goals were all in different lanes, and no one had ever pulled them together into one conversation. And by the end, you could start to see relief start to replace the tension. Not because we'd magically solved every detail, but because for the first time, John and Linda saw how all their efforts could align. They realized their fears of missing something were valid, but entirely manageable. They finally had clarity on where they stood, confidence about where they were heading, and starting to see a roadmap for making their dreams achievable. This leads us to step 2, the vision session. After our legacy review session, I asked John and Linda to take some time for themselves, not to gather more documents or dig through spreadsheets, but to reflect on 3 simple, powerful questions. So here they are. If money were no object, how would you live your most fulfilling life? If you had 5 to 10 healthy years left with no warning of the end, how would you spend your remaining time? Question 3, if you only had 1 day left to live, what would you regret not doing, being, or completing? And when we met again, something was different. They weren't talking about account balances anymore. They were actually talking about life. John shared how much he values his time and freedom, and not just stopping work, but having the space to be present with his family and explore parts of himself that he'd set aside for decades. And Linda talked about peace, but not just in the financial sense, but in her mind and body. She said, "I want to feel relaxed again. I don't want to carry this tension anymore, like we might be missing something." And that's when I knew. The real value of this session isn't just clarifying goals, it's reconnecting with what matters. So by the end of the session, John and Linda were clear. They didn't want to go at it alone. They wanted a plan that integrated everything, finances, taxes, investments, estate, into a single strategic vision. So now, if you're watching this and thinking, this sounds a lot like us, here's what I want you to do. Scroll down to the bottom in the description and book a complimentary call. We'll walk through your retirement plan the same way that I do for John and Linda, and we'll look at your actual numbers and show you, with clarity, whether you're financially independent and ready to retire. There's no sales pitch, just clarity and a simple summary and a plan. So step 3, the legacy plan session. So now that John and Linda have clarity around what they wanted, not just with the numbers, but the lives that they hope to live, we can finally start aligning the wealth to support it. And this is where the plan starts to come into focus. But the truth is, having a portfolio isn't the same as having a strategy. So here's what they needed to do to turn the scattered collection of accounts into a plan with purpose. Number 1, create a strategic withdrawal plan. John and Linda had saved well, about $2.3 million split between taxable, deferred, and Roth accounts. But here's the issue. Over 75% of their savings was in tax-deferred accounts like IRAs and 401ks. And now, that might not sound like a big deal at first, but once they hit age 75, they're forced to take the required minimum distributions. So that means pulling money out of their accounts whether they need it or not. And in their case, those withdrawals are over $160,000 per year. So that much income pushes them into a higher tax bracket, triggers higher Medicare premiums through IRMA surcharges, and it also limits their ability to give freely or adjust their plan without unexpected tax consequences. So instead of waiting for that tax bomb to go off, we needed to create a withdrawal strategy that gave them back control. So that meant starting with their taxable accounts first, letting their IRAs grow just a little bit longer, and using strategic Roth conversions during their low income years of what we call the gap years. So let me show you the result. This chart compares two paths. The area shaded on the top, that's the default plan, no action taken, RMDs just keep growing. The lower curve, that's the proposed strategy. By planning proactively, we're able to reduce their total required minimum distributions by over $1.7 million. Think about that. That's $1.7 billion they don't have to pull out, don't have to pay taxes on, and don't have to explain to Medicare. So this isn't about gaming the system. It's about understanding the system well enough to make it work for you. And that's the power of having a personalized income and tax plan, one that's coordinated, intentional, and designed to support the life that you actually want. Number 2 is a Roth conversion strategy. So I just mentioned it before. So between the age of 62 and 75, John and Linda have what we call gap years. So this is a period of stopping work and the start of required minimum distributions. During these years, their income would be significantly lower, which meant they would be sitting in a lower tax bracket than they would be later. And that's where the opportunity comes in. Gap years are golden for Roth conversions. Instead of letting their IRAs grow unchecked and waiting for those large forced withdrawals, we showed them how they could start moving money intentionally from their traditional IRA to the Roth IRA. And not everything at once, just enough each year to stay in the low tax bracket. In this case, it's between 12 and 15%. So once that money is converted, it's tax-free for life. It never gets taxed again, it's not going to cause higher RMDs, and it won't increase their Medicare premiums later on. And it gives them the control over timing and taxes, instead of letting the government decide when to pull their income and at what rate. Let me show you exactly how we did this for them. This chart shows two paths. The blue shaded area is their income without any conversions. The green curve shows what happens when we proactively convert over time. Not only does their taxable income stay smoother, but look at the result. Their tax-adjusted ending assets increased by $488,504, nearly $500,000, just by coordinating the timing of income. That's money they can use now to travel, to support their daughter, or give generously. All of that without creating unintended tax consequences down the line. That's what smart strategic planning actually looks like. It's not about chasing returns, it's about making what you already have work smarter. Another major area that we looked at with John and Linda was something that most investors and even many advisors overlook. It's called asset location. Now, asset allocation is about what you own, how much you have in stocks, bonds, and cash, and so on. But asset location is about where you hold those assets. And that can have a huge impact on your taxes over time. John and Linda had the typical setup. Stocks over here and bonds mixed across multiple accounts, some taxable, some tax deferred, some Roth. There was no coordination, no strategy behind what investments went into which account. So here's what we did. We placed the bonds inside of tax-deferred accounts like IRAs. We moved the equities into their taxable and Roth accounts. That way, interest income wasn't taxed annually. And growth-oriented investments could benefit from lower capital gains or tax-free altogether. So here's the result. This strategy led to $488,500 more in tax-adjusted ending assets, $162,524 less in taxes paid, and nearly $252,000 less withdrawn from their tax-deferred accounts. And we didn't increase their risk one bit. We simply placed the right investments in the right accounts. That's the power of coordination. This is one of the simplest but most overlooked strategies to improve long-term outcomes without changing your investments at all. You just need to make sure everything's working together. Number 4, build a bucket strategy to protect income. So retirement income isn't just about averages, it's about timing. If the market drops right when you start withdrawing, it can devastate your portfolio long-term. That's called sequence of return risk. To protect against that, John and Linda needed to structure their assets in 3 simple buckets. Bucket number 1, Freedom Fund. 2 years of income in cash or short-term bonds. Bucket number 2, Bridge Fund. This is the mid-range investments to support years 3 to 10. This is going to be more moderate. Bucket number 3, Legacy Fund. These are long-term investments that they're not going to touch for 10 plus years, or they may even leave it as a legacy. So this structure gave them peace of mind. Even if the market dipped tomorrow, their income wouldn't be affected. And number 5, healthcare strategy. Next, we needed to address one of the biggest wildcards in retirement, healthcare. And it's not just about Medicare Part A or B, it's about planning for rising premiums, rising out-of-pocket costs, and the possibility of needing long-term care down the road. So we modeled everything: Medicare premiums based on projected income, IRMA surcharges so there'd be no surprises, out-of-pocket expenses, and we even built in dedicated reserve for long-term care. Because the question isn't just what if it happens. The question is how will it affect the rest of your plan if it does? So by planning ahead, John and Linda knew that if one of them needed care, the other wouldn't have to sacrifice their financial security to provide it. And that gave them peace of mind, not just today, but for every stage of retirement. Number 6, aligning their estate plan with their values. John and Linda hadn't updated their estate plan in nearly a decade. Their daughter was still listed as contingent beneficiary in some of their accounts, but there was no plan tying it all together. They needed to update their revocable living trust, name proper beneficiaries across all of their accounts, and structure gifts in a way that preserved tax benefits. And they also wanted to help their daughter buy a home and support college savings for their 2 grandkids. So we explored gifting strategies that avoid unnecessary capital gains and use 529 plans where appropriate. And estate planning isn't just legal. It's emotional. It's about asking, what do I want my wealth to say about me when I'm gone? And number 7, stress test the plan for real life. Because here's the truth. Life rarely goes according to plan. So we asked the hard questions. What if the market drops right after we retire? What if taxes go up? Or Social Security gets cut? What if one of them lives 10 years longer than expected? Or healthcare costs spike when they're in their 80s? These aren't just hypotheticals. They're real risks every retiree faces. John and Linda needed to know, would their plan hold up? Not just in theory, but in real life. So this chart shows the results of that test. We modeled their baseline plan, ran it through a series of what ifs, a 30% market drop, 20% higher costs, lower investment returns, longer lifespans, and rising healthcare costs. Even with all of that stress layered in, the plan still had a high probability of success. Because we didn't build a fragile plan, we built a resilient one. One that bends but doesn't break. And this is what real planning is about. Not just trying to guess the future, but preparing wisely for the unknown. And that's how John and Linda could move forward. Not with blind optimism, but with calm and confidence. Because no matter what the market does, or what Congress or life throws at them, they're ready. And now we're ready for step 4, action and implementation. This is where everything we plan actually gets done. Because let's be honest, a plan without action is just a wish. So in this stage, we walk side by side with clients to implement every step. Accounts get repositioned, Roth conversions are executed, beneficiaries are updated, trusts are coordinated with the state attorneys, or we do it online, and every piece of the strategy is put in motion. We also establish a clear timeline: what gets done now, what gets reviewed next quarter, and what stays on the radar for years ahead. And there's no confusion, no guessing, just a clear path forward. So for John and Linda, the numbers were already there. They just needed to bring it all into alignment. And 6 months later, John and Linda walked away from full-time work. Not because they hit some magic number, and not because the market suddenly turned in their favor, but because they finally saw the whole picture and realized they were already free. They booked the trip to Italy, and they helped their daughter buy a home. And they told me something I'll never forget. We didn't realize how much this was actually weighing on us until it was gone. So if you're still working in your 60s, not because you want to, but because you're unsure, I want you to know this: you might already have enough. But until you have a clear, integrated plan that shows you how everything fits together, you're always going to wonder. That's why I created the Legacy Wealth Journey, to help families like yours retire with clarity, protect their loved ones, and align their money with what really matters. And it starts with one simple step: the Legacy Review Session. We'll look at your full financial picture, preview what your future looks like if nothing changes, and show you what's possible. No pressure, no commitment, just clarity. Because the real risk isn't retiring too early, it's waiting too long and missing the best years of your life. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, if any part of you is wondering, could that be us? I'd love to help you out. The link to book a call is in the description.